the whole of the Vatican and the Catholic Church is full of secrets.
2 books out today claim to expose some of the Vatican's most closely held secrets.
There's been a groundbreaking discovery regarding the truth behind the Vaticans. Today, we will reveal all the secrets that has been kept hidden from us for a very long time. Get ready for a journey into the unknown. Secrets of the Vatican Part 1. Deep beneath the Vatican lies a secret archive containing documents that date back over 1,200 years. This rare collection includes texts related to unexplained phenomena, including encounters with aliens. The Vatican has struggled with its secret archive for so long that it even changed its name from the Vatican Secret Archive to the Vatican Apostolic Archive, an attempt to quell the conspiracy theories surrounding the secrets it might hold. Unfortunately, it's a bit too late for that. The world is already aware that this archive houses thousands of records, many of which remain inaccessible to the public. Despite the Vatican's claims that they have opened the archives, the question arises, are they truly open? Yes, they are. When Pope Francis renamed the archives 5 years ago, he officially declassified the documents within them. You can now sift through files, such as the trial manuscripts of Galileo from 1633 or the papal bull issued by Pope Alexander VI in 1493, which granted Spain greater control over the New World, effectively separating it from Portugal. There's also a poignant plea from Mary, Queen of Scots, made just before her execution, begging Pope Sixtus V to spare her life. When the Pope did not intervene, she was executed in 1587. If you have the chance to read her letter, it's chilling. And then there's Henry VIII's letter requesting the Pope's permission for an annulment from Catherine of Aragon, so he could marry Anne Boleyn. Despite being signed by 85 clergymen, the Pope denied Henry's request, which led him to break away from Rome and establish the Church of England, an act that sparked centuries of violence between Catholics and Protestants. The archives stretch for 53 miles of shelving.
A vast collection of historic treasures beyond compare, founded over 5 centuries ago.
And the Vatican claims that everything they have ever placed in the archives is now available for public scrutiny. This includes the oldest document in the archive, a loose piece of parchment discussing a church donation in Venice from 809 AD. However, while the Church asserts that all is open to the public, it resembles the CIA's claims of having declassified all documents concerning UFOs. You have to wonder, can you truly believe them? Do you think the Church would keep any secrets from you? Much of the information in the archives has been digitized, but accessing the more intriguing documents has proven challenging. Diana Walsh-Puller, a religious studies professor at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, noted that the historical record is filled with supernatural events. However, she explained that the Vatican staff often struggle to locate these records since they're packed away in the Vatican's basement, hidden under layers of cobwebs. Diana mentioned that archivists are currently working hard to digitize everything they possess, but given the vast amount of documents, they prioritize what they consider significant. Unfortunately, this means that tales of UFO sightings and strange orbs in the sky during the Middle Ages might not be among the first to be digitized. Gary Nolan from Stanford University describes the Vatican archives as a potential treasure trove for information on UFOs, calling it the oldest library system of paranormal knowledge still in existence. So where is that information?
The Vatican archives, whenever they're going to be opened, are going to reveal extraordinary levels of details.
Specialists often discuss the alien secrets hidden in the Vatican, but I'd love to see them. The Catholic Church and the Holocaust. Recent information has shed new light on the complex history of the Catholic Church during the Holocaust. Many are aware of the accusations against the Vatican for maintaining silence while Hitler committed one of history's gravest atrocities. This subject remains controversial and sensitive. Pope Pius XII signed a treaty with Nazi Germany before becoming Pope, and once in office, he remained silent while millions of Jews were deported to concentration camps and murdered. Scholars have long accused the Vatican of complicity with Hitler in his so-called final solution, the extermination of the Jewish race. However, newly discovered documents raise questions about the validity of these accusations. A list of names has been found at the Pontifical Biblical Institute in Vatican City, comprising 3,200 Jews who were secretly sheltered from the Holocaust by Catholic convents and monasteries after the Nazis occupied Rome in 1943.
A series of recently opened Vatican archives are shedding new light on the relationship between Pope Pius XII and Adolf Hitler.
This suggests that the Vatican was actively trying to save as many Jewish lives as possible, at least within Rome. But if this is true, why did Pope Pius XII remain silent when he could have spoken out against Hitler's actions? This inconsistency fuels the controversy, leaving many to wonder if the Pope was collaborating with Hitler or secretly working against him. The newly discovered documentation complicates the narrative further. The names on the list have been verified by Rome's Jewish community, which collaborated closely with Israel's Yad Vashem Holocaust Museum and a couple of Catholic-affiliated universities. The individuals on the list had been deported from the Jewish ghetto in Rome, which was similar to ghettos established in Germany and Poland. Rather than being sent across the Tiber River to concentration camps, where they would likely have met their demise, they were hidden by Catholic religious institutions. These documents were compiled by Father Giosuè Bolognini, an Italian Jesuit, in 1945. While they appear benevolent at first glance, Jewish historian David Kurtzer has voiced skepticism. He claims that Catholic institutions would often only provide shelter to Jews who agreed to convert to Catholicism. They would save Jews from the Nazis, but only if they agreed to be baptized. This raises questions about the selflessness of their actions. What would Jesus think of such conditions? The true cross. While there are enough fragments of what is known as the true cross scattered around the world to construct an ark, the one housed in the Vatican holds special significance. It was gifted to the people of Rome by Emperor Justin II in the late 6th century. But where did Justin acquire it? Justin ruled the Eastern Roman Empire from 565 to 578 AD, alongside his wife, Empress Sophia. The cross he presented to the people of Rome is known as the Crux Gemmata, or jewelled cross, which is beautifully adorned with gems and covered in gold and silver gilt. An inscription in Latin on the cross reads, "For the wood with which human Christ was overcome by the enemy, Justin and his consort give Rome this wealth and decoration." I must admit, while Justin's cross is indeed impressive, is it genuine? Or is this yet another artifact the Vatican showcases without scientific validation? According to church tradition, the true cross was made from 3 different types of wood: cedar, pine, and cypress. It is said that these trees grew together in one location, and the same wood was used to construct the temple in Jerusalem, as well as the Second Temple, with the last use being the construction of Christ's cross. Shroud of Turin. Huge breakthrough. Either scientists are deceiving us, the church is misleading us, or the existence of Jesus Christ has just been confirmed. A cloth believed to have been buried with Jesus around 2,000 years ago has now been verified as authentic. This revelation shocked many, especially since previous studies had dated the cloth to centuries after Jesus' death. The artifact in question is known as the Shroud of Turin, which is mentioned in the Bible. According to Scripture, when Jesus Christ was crucified, his body was wrapped in a linen shroud before being placed in a tomb. Matthew 27:59-60 states, "Then Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a new linen cloth, and placed it in his own new tomb that he had cut out of the rock. He rolled a large stone in front of the entrance to the tomb and went away." The shroud resurfaced in Italy in the 14th century, where it was given to the dean of a church in Lire, France, by the legendary French knight Geoffroy de Charny. There's little information on its origins prior to this, leaving a 1,300-year gap after Christ's death, where its whereabouts are unknown. Now, let me introduce you to David Rolfe, a filmmaker and former atheist. David embarked on a journey to create a documentary about the Shroud of Turin. Instead of debunking the artifact, his findings convinced him of its authenticity, leading him to convert to Christianity. He stated, "I started off as an atheist, then became agnostic, and now I'm a Christian because I cannot possibly understand anything else that could have produced that image." The image David refers to is the one depicting Jesus Christ's face, which appears to be seared into the cloth when it was wrapped around him. Not only does it show his face, but it also features the faint yet distinct outline of his entire body. The shroud measures 14 feet long and, if authentic, suggests that Jesus stood around 5 feet 6 inches tall. What do you think about the idea of Jesus being considered short by today's standards? The shroud depicts him with slightly sunken eyes and long, straight hair, and it also illustrates the wounds he sustained during his torture and crucifixion. In the 1980s, researchers deemed the shroud a forgery.
In 1988, a group of scientists were able to get permission to get a sample from the shroud and to subject it to radiocarbon,
conducting scientific analyses that dated the fabric to the Middle Ages. They focused on a small corner of the shroud, concluding that it originated around 1200 AD, making it about 200 years too young. However, recent scientific tests suggest that those researchers may have erred. It turns out the section they examined might have been repaired due to significant damage. More recent tests utilised X-ray techniques. Scientists at the Institute of Crystallography employed X-ray scattering to analyse the cellulose patterns in the fabric, examining sugar molecules to determine its age. Their findings indicated that the linen dates back to around 55 AD, which aligns closely with the time of Jesus' crucifixion. This is groundbreaking information. The shroud has now been scientifically proven to be approximately 2,000 years old.
The shroud is 2,000 years old, which coincides with our Lord's life and crucifixion.
Additionally, this isn't the first instance where the Shroud of Turin has been deemed authentic. Since the 1980s, over 170 peer-reviewed academic papers have been published regarding the fabric, many concluding that it is genuine. However, even if it is authentic, did it truly belong to Christ? Experts at the same facility that confirmed its age also discovered something quite disturbing. They found evidence that blood on the shroud belonged to a torture victim. They identified substances like fibrin and creatinine in the blood, which typically indicate severe trauma. Could this blood belong to Jesus? Or was this shroud wrapped around someone who suffered extreme torture? The origins of the shroud before it was discovered by the French knight in the 1350s remain unknown. The mummies under the church. If you're looking to see mummies, skip the trip to ancient Egypt and head to the Dominican Church of the Holy Spirit in the heart of Vilnius, where mummies rest in a dark and damp cavern beneath the church's altar. These mummies have endured the unfortunate fate of being mistreated by both Napoleon and the Nazis. Vilnius is the capital of Lithuania, located near Russia. When the Polish army retreated from their invasion of Russia and sought refuge in Vilnius, some soldiers hid in this ancient church. In their desperation for warmth, they stripped coffins hidden beneath the altar for firewood. During World War II, Nazi soldiers used the church as a bomb shelter, but the regime's presence didn't save it from destruction. When the Soviets took control of the area, they repurposed the crypt into a museum of atheism. Nowadays, anthropologists are striving to preserve these holy mummies and uncover their secrets. Dario Pomino Mascali conducted an analysis of the 23 mummified inhabitants of the church, which included men, women, and even a few children. These individuals perished as far back as the 16th century and became naturally mummified due to the cold conditions in the crypt. Remarkably, the mummies still retain most of their skin, and their organs are neatly preserved within their torsos. Some are even dressed in clothing. The first DNA sample taken by Dario came from the legs of a mummified child who died around 1643, reportedly from smallpox. Interestingly, smallpox likely emerged around the time of the pharaohs in ancient Egypt, and scientists are still trying to pinpoint its origin. The disease has claimed over 500 million lives worldwide. What researchers discovered within these mummies is alarming. They traced the smallpox DNA in the child back to a mysterious strain that appeared in 1530. Scientists theorize that this strain may have jumped from animals to humans and warn that a similar strain could still exist in animals today, posing a threat of a modern pandemic. Even the Soviets were apprehensive about potential diseases carried by these mummies. In the 1960s, Russian forensic scientist Joseph Albanis Maras reported that over 200 mummies resided in the crypt. However, due to fears of possible contagions, most were discarded into a pit, which was then sealed with a glass cover, leading it to be dubbed the Chamber of Death. And yes, the Vatican has mummies too. A scandal erupted when it was revealed that some ancient mummies in the Vatican were actually fakes. Recent research at the Vatican museums in Rome uncovered discrepancies, shocking the Vatican. But why does the Vatican possess mummies? It's because they house an extensive collection of Egyptian artifacts, including a section dedicated to Egyptian history. In 2015, researchers examining 9 of the Vatican's full-bodied mummies found 2 that were not ancient at all. They dated back to the 1800s, during the height of mummy mania. These diminutive mummies, each less than 2 feet long, led Vatican researchers to believe they might be the remains of either children or falcons. It seems straightforward to distinguish a child from a falcon, even when wrapped in mummy bandages, but the reality proved more complex. Through a series of X-rays and CT scans, researchers revealed that the bones inside the wrappings belonged to a man and a woman from the Middle Ages. They even discovered a nail from the 19th century inside the wrappings. Ultimately, the only ancient components of these mummies were their wrappings, as the actual remains were merely random collections of bones. So, why would anyone go to the trouble of wrapping modern bones in ancient bandages? The answer lies in a fascinating history. In 1798, Napoleon Bonaparte launched an expedition to Egypt, and the subsequent discovery of the Rosetta Stone in 1799 ignited an obsession with Egyptian antiquities unlike any before. Wealthy individuals in Europe and the US were eager to acquire mummies and artifacts. In 1833, a monk noted, "It would hardly be respectable upon one's return from Egypt to present oneself without a mummy in one hand and a crocodile in the other." The demand for mummies was so high that merchants began running out of genuine mummies, and the market for fakes boomed. At some point, the Vatican unknowingly added 2 fakes to its extensive collection: the Pharaohs and the Ark of the Covenant.
Ark of the Covenant is probably one of the best kept mysteries in the world today.
Finding the Ark of the Covenant could unleash terrible evils upon the world. As noted in 1 Samuel 6:19, but God struck down some of the inhabitants of Beth Shemesh, 70 of them to death because they looked into the Ark of the Lord. The Ark is one of the holiest yet most terrifying artifacts known to humanity. But where is it hidden? Some claim it lies beneath the Vatican, while others believe it's buried under the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. According to the Bible, Moses constructed the Ark after leading the Israelites out of Egypt in the 13th century BC. At that time, the Israelites' relationship with their God was new. They worshipped a deity named Yahweh and were, to be honest, somewhat of a fringe cult. The Ark, made from acacia wood and overlaid with gold, tons, adorned with cherubim, served as the first tangible connection between the Israelites and their God. It was initially kept in the Tabernacle of Moses, and centuries later, when King Solomon built the first temple in Jerusalem, they finally had a permanent home for the Ark. Everything was well until the Babylonians arrived in 597 BC, seeking war and destruction, and they razed the Jewish temple. The Ark was lost and has never been recovered since. However, there are clues, some of which may be found in ancient Egypt. In 2015, researcher Scott Bogle published an intriguing article that pointed out an unusual coincidence. The Ark of the Covenant bears a striking resemblance to a sacred bark mentioned in the Bible. We know exactly what the Ark looked like, as it was described in detail. It measured 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high, covered with a lid and carried by wooden poles, all overlaid with hammered gold foil. When Pharaoh Tutankhamun's tomb was opened in the Valley of the Kings, archaeologists discovered something remarkably similar: a wooden box covered in hammered gold foil and carried by wooden poles. While the Ark of the Covenant was adorned with cherubim, Tutankhamun's box was flanked by Anubis, the jackal god. The physical dimensions of both were nearly identical. Although this was not the Ark of the Covenant, it belonged to the same category of sacred chests prevalent throughout Egyptian history. These boxes held great significance in their religious practices. During festivals, gods would be placed on thrones inside ornate golden shrines, paraded above throngs of worshippers on poles, and typically flanked by winged sphinxes, much like the cherubim described in the Bible. Could there be a hidden connection between ancient Egypt and the missing Ark of the Covenant? And is it possible that the Vatican is concealing this very secret? Secrets of the Vatican Part 2. I'm not done exploring the Vatican's secret files on aliens just yet. Let's discuss David Grush, a former US intelligence officer who recently claimed that the US has been retrieving crashed UFOs for decades. According to David, the very first UFO recovered by the US was in Italy with assistance from the Pope. Over the past year, he's been making waves on social media with his assertions about aliens at the Vatican, and the public is left wondering what to believe. David has an impressive background. He worked for the National Reconnaissance Office and the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. He was also a functioning member of the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, created by the government to specifically investigate UFO sightings. If there's anyone we should take seriously regarding aliens, it's David Grush. According to him, just before World War II, an alien spacecraft crashed in Magenta, Italy.
In 1933, it's claimed that a UFO crashed in the Lombardy region of Italy. This was apparently an object around 50 feet in diameter, like two saucers joined together. It was described as being greyish in colour and metallic.
However, Italian dictator Benito Mussolini seized it and kept it until the end of the war. Once the situation stabilised, Pope Pius XII informed the Americans about the UFO's location, allowing them to retrieve it. They brought the craft back to the US for further analysis, but the fate of that ship remains a mystery. Even though David claims to have accessed classified documents and spoken to eyewitnesses, he hasn't been able to provide specific details about the alien technology or how the US might be utilising it. This raises an interesting question. If the US has a collection of crashed UFOs, shouldn't other countries have some as well? Could this indicate a global conspiracy? The Christmas secret the Church doesn't want you to know. I know it's a little early, but I'd like to talk about Christmas, or rather, the origins of Christmas. While most people associate the holiday with the birth of Christ, what many don't realise is that the Church is hiding something significant. The Vatican doesn't want you to know that Christmas has roots tracing back to a much older deity from Babylon named Tammuz, who may have been the original template for Jesus Christ. Christmas Day coincides with the winter solstice, marking the time when days begin to grow longer and the sun rises a little higher in the northern hemisphere. Around 2,500 years ago in Babylon, The return of the sun was celebrated as the reincarnation of Tammuz. In Babylonian mythology, the chief god was Nimrod, and his wife was Semiramis. After Nimrod's death, Semiramis became supernaturally pregnant, much like the Virgin Mary, and she claimed that she was impregnated by magic. She gave birth to Tammuz on December 25th, the same day that Jesus Christ is said to have been born. Both Jesus and Tammuz were regarded as sons of God, but the Babylonian narrative takes a darker turn. Semiramis believed her son was a reincarnation of her deceased husband, Nimrod, and eventually married him. On the night of Tammuz's birth, an evergreen tree sprouted from a dead tree stump, symbolizing the birth of new life. This story explains the tradition of opening presents underneath a Christmas tree each year. In Babylon, it became an annual custom to celebrate Tammuz's birth by gathering around a great evergreen tree and exchanging gifts. The Babylonians would venture into the woods, cut down an evergreen, decorate it, and place gifts underneath it. The Vatican will likely never admit how much of its cherished customs and traditions are based on ancient pagan rituals. Maria the Mystic. Maria Simmer was an Austrian mystic known for her extraordinary encounters with souls in purgatory. Her story is one of the most peculiar among the obscure mystics in the Catholic Church. Born in 1915 into a family of poor peasants with 7 siblings, Maria's childhood was marked by hardship. They often had little to eat, relying heavily on their faith in God to sustain them. By the age of 7, Maria felt a strong calling to the Lord. At 17, she entered the Sacred Heart of Jesus Covenant in Tyrol. But due to a long-standing illness that had ravaged her health, she was compelled to leave. The Mother Superior deemed her too weak to be of service. This pattern repeated itself when she sought to join the Dominicans and Franciscans, yet was turned away due to her frail condition. At 25, Maria experienced her first visitation from a departed soul. One night, she noticed a man pacing at the foot of her bed. When she shouted at him, he did not respond. Attempting to grab him, she found that he vanished at her touch. Each time she returned to bed, the mysterious figure would reappear, only to disappear again later. When Maria shared her experiences with her parish priest, he suggested that the apparition was a ghost from purgatory, possibly seeking assistance. The ghost returned the following night, and when Maria inquired about his needs, he revealed that he required 3 holy masses to be said in his name for his deliverance from limbo. Over the next few years, Maria was repeatedly visited by souls in purgatory, all asking for prayers and sacrifices. These spirits expressed anguish over being forgotten by their families, emphasizing that they could not escape their limbo without someone's help. Despite her profound experiences, Maria was never canonized by the Church. She lived her entire life in poverty in a small chalet in St. Anton am Arlberg, Austria, passing away on March 16, 2004. The Church has remained curiously silent about her, refraining from confirming her connections with the deceased. While the Vatican has a history of acknowledging miracles, they often shy away from mystics like Maria. Do you think Maria truly saw souls trapped in purgatory? The Gospel of Satan. One of the most frightening artifacts said to be held in the Vatican is a book of immeasurable power, known as the Gospel of Satan. So many rumours surrounding this tome that scholars aren't sure what's true and what's fiction. No one has ever seen the book, but it is believed to have been discovered in Jerusalem in 1750, supposedly in the Key of Solomon, or so the story goes. In reality, scholars think the book was likely written by someone in the 18th century. There are various editions of the book, with dates attributed to 1421, 5021, and 1702. This timeline is quite confusing, especially since none of these early editions are currently available. You can find contemporary versions of the Gospel of Satan, but these are based on the writings of 19th century occultist Eliphas Levi. The elusive 1421 edition, however, remain nowhere to be found, and it is said that earlier versions are housed within the Vatican, as the Church has supposedly been collecting them. The contemporary edition of the Gospel of Satan also known as the Grand Grimoire or the Red Dragon, includes an introductory chapter. This introduction states that the material in the grimoire is derived from two very ancient and powerful texts, the Key of Solomon and the Lesser Key of Solomon, both supposedly authored by King Solomon himself over 3,000 years ago. King Solomon from the Bible is known for his wisdom and his dealings with the supernatural. These ancient texts are filled with spells, summoning instructions, and all manner of divination. The Gospel of Satan focuses on the devil, containing guidelines for summoning demons and binding them to do your bidding. It also features an instructional manual for making deals with Satan, presumably at the cost of your own soul. Among the demons you can summon are Lucifer, of course, along with powerful entities like Beelzebub and Astaroth. If you're not ready to tackle the mightier demons, you can opt for lesser ones such as Nairu or Satanachia. If you had the chance, which demon would you summon if you could master the spells in the Gospel of Satan? This bathtub is worth $2 billion. The Vatican is home to some of history's greatest treasures, including Emperor Nero's bathtub, which dates back 2,000 years. This luxurious bathtub is crafted from rare Egyptian marble known as imperial porphyry. If it were to be recreated today, it could cost anywhere from $1 to $2 billion. All of this exquisite marble came from a single quarry in a remote part of Roman Egypt, discovered in 18 BC. The Romans mined as much as they could until they lost control of Egypt 600 years later. The Vatican also houses portraits of the most famous athletes from 217 AD. The mosaics of these athletes were taken from the great baths of Caracalla, where the elite of Roman society would gather. Commissioned by Emperor Septimius Severus in 206 AD, the baths of Caracalla were considered one of the most luxurious bathing complexes in the ancient world, capable of accommodating 1,600 bathers at once. If you think your public pool is crowded today, you would have been overwhelmed by the sheer number of Roman bathers. St. Peter's Basilica is home to Michelangelo's Pietà, a stunning marble sculpture that has captivated visitors for centuries. And let's not forget the Vatican Codex, considered one of the oldest complete Bibles in existence, dating back to roughly 325 AD. While it is not an original, as it was written in Greek, the original Bible was likely penned in Hebrew or Aramaic. Still, the Vatican Codex remains one of the earliest versions of the Bible that survives today. Let me know in the comments which demon you'd choose to summon and why. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to hit that button and come back soon for more awesome videos from the channel.